The rain pounded against the grimy windshield as the black SUV pulled up to the curb. Sergeant Dominic Rains stepped out, his eyes scanning the silent, eerie suburban street. Something wasn't right. This was supposed to be a routine call about a stray dog, but the air was thick with an ominous, foreboding energy. Dominic gripped the leash tightly as his K-9 partner, Kaiser, let out a low growl. The German shepherd sensed the tension in the air, his hackles raised. They made their way to the address, the only sound the squelch of their boots on the wet pavement. Dominic's phone suddenly rang, the shrill tone cutting through the stillness. "This is Rains," he answered, his voice low and guarded. "Sergeant, we've got a situation at the Fairview Estates HOA," his captain said, urgency lacing his tone. "One of the residents, Vanessa Wilkins, claims her neighbor's dog is a threat to the community. She's demanding we seize the animal immediately." Dominic felt a chill run down his spine. Fairview Estates, the notorious homeowners association known for its draconian rules and abuse of power. He'd heard the horror stories, but never imagined he'd be caught in the middle of their web of control. Did Wilkins provide any evidence of the dog being dangerous? Dominic asked, already dreading the answer. "That's the thing, Rains," the captain replied. "There's no record of any previous incidents or complaints. Wilkins is claiming the dog is aggressive and unpredictable. But it seems like a classic case of an HOA Karen trying to abuse her authority." Dominic's grip tightened on the leash as Kaiser let out another rumbling growl. "I'm on my way," he said, his jaw set with determination. He knew this was more than just a simple dog dispute. It was a battle against a corrupt, power-hungry HOA that would stop at nothing to maintain its grip on the community. As Dominic approached the Wilkins house, he could see the curtains twitch and a face peer out, before quickly disappearing. The front door swung open, and a woman in a pristine, tailored pantsuit stepped out, her expression one of calculated disdain. "Officer Rains, I presume," Vanessa Wilkins said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I'm so glad you could come. This creature next door has been terrorizing our neighborhood for far too long." Dominic felt Kaiser tense beside him. The dog's eyes narrowed as he stared at Wilkins. "Ma'am, I understand you've made a complaint, but I'll need to assess the situation myself before taking any action." Wilkins' lips curled into a sneer. "Well, you can assess all you want, but I expect this animal to be removed immediately. We have strict rules here in Fairview Estates, and I won't allow some mongrel to disrupt the peace and decorum of our community." Dominic could feel the tension mounting, the air thick with an undercurrent of danger. This was no simple dog dispute. It was a high-stakes power struggle, and he was caught right in the middle of it. As he followed Wilkins to the neighboring house, Dominic knew he was about to enter a world of manipulation, deception, and a battle against an HOA that would stop at nothing to maintain its stranglehold on the community. The only question was who would emerge victorious. The Wilkins house faded into the distance as Dominic approached the neighboring property, his eyes scanning the well-manicured lawn and the imposing, Tudor-style facade. Something about this house felt off, a subtle undercurrent of tension that set his senses on high alert. Dominic glanced down at Kaiser, who had fallen into a focused, alert stance, his ears perked forward. The German shepherd was picking up on the same uneasy energy, his muscles coiled and ready to spring into action at the first sign of trouble. Dominic took a deep breath and stepped up to the front door, his hand poised to knock. But before his knuckles could make contact, the door swung open, revealing a tall, slender woman with piercing green eyes and a guarded expression. "Can I help you, officer?" she asked, her voice calm and measured, betraying none of the apprehension that Dominic sensed in her posture. "Ma'am, I'm Sergeant Dominic Rains, and this is my partner, Kaiser," Dominic said, gesturing to the dog at his side. "We've received a complaint about your dog, and I need to assess the situation." The woman's brow furrowed, a flicker of something akin to annoyance crossing her features. "I see," she said, her tone clipped. "Well, I can assure you, my dog is not a threat to anyone. In fact, he's the friendliest, most well-behaved animal you'll ever meet." Dominic could sense the underlying tension in her words, the subtle challenge that dared him to doubt her. "I'd still like to take a look, if you don't mind," he said, his own voice calm and measured. The woman hesitated for a fraction of a second, her eyes narrowing as she seemed to weigh her options. Then, with a reluctant sigh, she stepped aside, allowing Dominic and Kaiser to enter the house. The interior was immaculate, every surface gleaming and every piece of furniture in its place. Dominic couldn't help but note the distinct lack of any personal touches, the house feeling more like a showroom than a lived-in home. As they made their way through the foyer, a large, golden retriever bounded into the room, its tail wagging enthusiastically. Dominic watched as the woman's expression softened, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her lips. "There's my good boy," she said, dropping to one knee and running her fingers through the dog's thick fur. "This is Max, my companion. As you can see, he's hardly a threat to anyone." Dominic couldn't help but feel a twinge of skepticism. Something about the woman's reaction, the way she so carefully chose her words, set off alarm bells in his mind. But before he could press the issue, a loud, shrill voice cut through the air, shattering the relative calm. "What is the meaning of this?" Vanessa Wilkins stormed through the front door, her eyes blazing with fury. "I thought I made it perfectly clear that this animal was to be removed immediately." Dominic braced himself, knowing that the confrontation he had been dreading was about to unfold. The battle lines had been drawn, and the power struggle between the HOA and the homeowner was about to reach a fever pitch. Vanessa Wilkins' shrill voice cut through the air, her eyes burning with a fierce determination as she fixed Dominic with a withering glare. "I demanded that you remove this creature from our community immediately," she spat, her perfectly manicured nails clenching into tight fists. "And yet, here you are, wasting time and allowing this menace to continue terrorizing our neighborhood." Dominic could feel the tension in the room thickening, the air crackling with a palpable sense of danger. He glanced over at the homeowner, whose calm facade had been replaced by a guarded, almost weary expression. "Ma'am," Dominic began, raising a hand in a placating gesture, "I understand your concerns, but I need to assess the situation myself before taking any action. As I've already explained to your neighbor, there's no evidence that this dog poses a threat." Vanessa's lips curled into a disdainful sneer. "Evidence? Since when do we need evidence in Fairview Estates? I'm the president of the Homeowners Association, and I'm telling you that this animal is a danger to our community. Now, remove it, or I'll have you both arrested for obstructing justice." The homeowner stepped forward, her green eyes narrowing as she fixed Vanessa with a steely gaze. "I'm afraid I can't allow that, Mrs. Wilkins. This is my home, and Max is a valued member of my family. Unless you have a valid court order, you have no authority to demand his removal." Vanessa's face contorted with rage, her cheeks flushing a deep, angry red. "Valid court order? Ha! I'll have you know that the HOA has the power to enforce our rules, regardless of what any court says. You're just a troublemaker, stirring up problems in our peaceful community." Dominic could feel the tension building, the air thick with the potential for violence. He knew he had to defuse the situation before it escalated beyond his control. "Mrs. Wilkins, I understand your concerns, but I'm going to need some time to investigate this matter thoroughly," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "In the meantime, I would suggest that all parties involved remain calm and refrain from any further confrontation." Vanessa's eyes narrowed, her lips pressed into a thin, tight line. "Fine," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "But mark my words, Sergeant Rains, this isn't over. I'll be in touch with the HOA's legal team, and they'll make sure that this creature is removed, one way or another." With that, Vanessa spun on her heel and stormed out, the door slamming behind her with a resounding thud. Dominic let out a slow, steadying breath, his gaze meeting the homeowner's. "I apologize for the disruption, ma'am," he said, his tone laced with a hint of regret. "I can assure you that I'll do everything in my power to ensure that your dog remains safe and undisturbed." The homeowner's expression softened, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I appreciate that, Sergeant Rains, but I fear this is only the beginning. Vanessa Wilkins and the Fairview Estates HOA are not known for their willingness to back down." Dominic nodded, his mind already whirring with the implications of this confrontation. He knew that he had just stepped into a high-stakes power struggle, one that would require all of his tactical prowess and strategic thinking to navigate. But with Kaiser by his side, he was determined to come out on top. As Dominic and Kaiser made their way back to the squad car, the rain had ceased, but the air still felt heavy with tension. The confrontation with Vanessa Wilkins and the Fairview Estates HOA had left him with a growing sense of unease. He slid into the driver's seat, his hands gripping the steering wheel as he replayed the exchange in his mind. The homeowner's calm demeanor, the calculated way she had chosen her words, it was clear that she was no mere victim, but a strategic player in this high-stakes game. Dominic glanced over at Kaiser, who was sitting attentively in the passenger seat, his eyes scanning the quiet street. "What do you think, boy?" Dominic murmured, reaching over to give the dog's head a gentle scratch. "This is more than just a routine dog complaint, isn't it?" Kaiser let out a soft, rumbling growl, his ears perking forward. Dominic knew that his K-9 partner could sense the underlying tension, the currents of danger that ran through this seemingly tranquil suburban neighborhood. Dominic's phone suddenly buzzed, the captain's number flashing on the screen. With a sigh, he answered the call, bracing himself for the inevitable barrage of questions. "Rains, what the hell is going on over there?" the captain's voice demanded, laced with a mixture of frustration and concern. "I just got an earful from Vanessa Wilkins, and she's threatening to have the entire department on administrative leave if we don't remove that dog immediately." Dominic grimaced, knowing that Wilkins would stop at nothing to assert her control over the situation. "Sir, I've assessed the dog, and there's no evidence to support her claims of it being a threat. This is more than just a simple animal complaint. It's a power struggle between the homeowner and the HOA." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line, followed by a resigned sigh. "I figured as much. Fairview Estates has been a thorn in our side for years, with their constant abuse of power and disregard for due process. But Wilkins is a force to be reckoned with, and she's got the entire HOA backing her up." Dominic's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan of action. "Sir, I need more time to investigate this properly. There's clearly more going on here than meets the eye, and I'm not going to let Wilkins bully me or the homeowner into a hasty decision." Another pause, then the captain's voice softened with a hint of understanding. "I hear you, Rains, but you need to tread carefully here. Wilkins and the HOA have a lot of influence, and they won't hesitate to throw their weight around. Just be careful, okay?" "Understood, sir," Dominic replied, his resolve hardening. "I'll keep you posted on any developments." As he ended the call, Dominic leaned back in his seat, his mind churning with the implications of the situation. This was no longer just about a dog dispute. It had evolved into a high-stakes battle of wits and wills, one that would require all of his tactical prowess and legal expertise to navigate. He glanced over at Kaiser, who was watching him intently, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. "All right, partner," Dominic murmured. "Time to get to work. We've got a corrupt HOA to take down." As Dominic and Kaiser drove away from the Fairview Estates neighborhood, the sergeant's mind was buzzing with a dozen different strategies and contingency plans. He knew that he was now embroiled in a complex, high-stakes power struggle, one that would require all of his legal expertise and tactical acumen to navigate. Pulling into the police station's parking lot, Dominic quickly made his way to his desk, Kaiser faithfully by his side. He needed to gather as much information as possible about the Fairview Estates HOA and its inner workings if he was going to have any chance of outmaneuvering Vanessa Wilkins and her legal team. Dominic began sifting through old case files, news reports, and community forums, piecing together a comprehensive picture of the HOA's history of abuse and corruption. Tales of residents being fined for minor infractions, homeowners being threatened with liens and foreclosure for refusing to comply with the HOA's draconian rules, and even instances of the association using surveillance and intimidation tactics to maintain its grip on the community. As Dominic delved deeper, he realized that the Fairview Estates HOA was no ordinary homeowners association. It was a well-oiled machine of manipulation and control, wielding its power with an iron fist and a complete disregard for the rights and well-being of its residents. Suddenly, a glimmer of hope emerged from the sea of information. Dominic stumbled upon a series of reports detailing a lawsuit that had been filed against the HOA by a former resident, alleging abuse of power, harassment, and even possible financial misdeeds. Bingo, Dominic murmured, his eyes gleaming with a newfound determination. He quickly reached for his phone, dialing the number of the lawyer who had spearheaded the case. As the call connected, Dominic could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. But he knew that he couldn't afford to back down, not when the stakes were this high. The Fairview Estates HOA had met its match in Sergeant Dominic Rains, and he was more than ready to take them on. "Hello, this is Sergeant Rains," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "I need your help. I'm about to go to war with the Fairview Estates HOA, and I could use some legal expertise on my side." The lawyer on the other end of the line paused, a hint of surprise in their voice. "War with the Fairview Estates HOA, you say? Well, Sergeant, you've certainly piqued my interest. Tell me more." Dominic leaned back in his chair, a determined smile spreading across his face. "It's a long story, but buckle up. This is going to be one hell of a fight." As he delved into the details of the case, Dominic could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He was about to embark on a high-stakes battle, one that would test his wits, his resolve, and his unwavering commitment to justice. But with the backing of a seasoned legal team and the support of his K-9 partner, Dominic was more than ready to take on the Fairview Estates HOA and emerge victorious. The rain had given way to a thick, oppressive fog that blanketed the Fairview Estates neighborhood, casting an eerie, ominous atmosphere over the meticulously manicured lawns and pristine facades. Sergeant Dominic Rains and his partner, Kaiser, made their way through the hazy streets, their senses on high alert. They were about to enter the lion's den, but this time they were armed with a secret weapon, the expertise of a tenacious lawyer who had taken on the Fairview Estates HOA before. As they approached the homeowner's house, Dominic couldn't help but feel a twinge of unease. The property was under constant surveillance, he knew, with a network of hidden cameras and security measures that the HOA used to monitor its residents. Dominic steeled himself, knowing that every step he took would be scrutinized, every word he said meticulously analyzed. But he also knew that he had the legal and tactical advantage, thanks to the information he had uncovered and the strategy he had devised with the help of his new ally. Reaching the front door, Dominic gave a firm knock, his gaze fixed on the peephole, waiting for the homeowner to appear. After a brief moment, the door swung open, revealing the woman's guarded, yet determined expression. "Sergeant Rains," she said, her voice betraying a hint of relief. "I wasn't expecting you back so soon." Dominic offered a reassuring nod. "Ma'am, I apologize for the intrusion, but I'm afraid the situation has taken a more serious turn. I need to speak with you, in private, about concerning information I've uncovered." The woman's brow furrowed, a flicker of unease crossing her features. "Of course, please come in," she said, stepping aside to allow Dominic and Kaiser to enter. As they made their way through the pristine, impersonal interior, Dominic couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. The house felt more like a showcase than a home, every detail meticulously curated to project an image of perfection. Once they were safely inside, Dominic turned to the homeowner, his expression grave. "Ma'am, I've been doing some digging, and it seems that the Fairview Estates of HOA has a long history of abusing its power and exploiting its residents." The woman's eyes widened, a flash of understanding dawning on her face. "I see," she murmured, her voice low and measured. "And you believe they're targeting me and my dog, don't you?" Dominic nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I do, and I'm here to offer you a way to fight back, legally and strategically." He proceeded to outline the details of the lawsuit he had uncovered, the evidence of the HOA's misconduct, and the legal team he had enlisted to take them on. The homeowner listened intently, her expression shifting from guarded to cautiously hopeful. "So, you're saying we have a chance of taking them down?" she asked, her voice tinged with a hint of disbelief. Dominic offered a determined smile. "More than a chance, ma'am. With the right strategy and the right legal team, we can not only protect your dog, but expose the Fairview Estates HOA for the corrupt, power-hungry entity that it is." The homeowner's lips curled into a faint smile, a glimmer of resolve shining in her eyes. "Then let's do it. I'm ready to fight back." Dominic nodded, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose. This was no longer just about a dog dispute. It was a battle for the very soul of the Fairview Estates community, and he was determined to emerge victorious. The air in the Fairview Estates neighborhood was thick with tension, the once pristine and well-manicured streets now tinged with an underlying sense of unease. Sergeant Dominic Rains and his K-9 partner, Kaiser, made their way through the fog-shrouded streets, their eyes scanning their surroundings with a keen sense of vigilance. Dominic's meeting with the homeowner had been a pivotal moment, a turning point in the high-stakes battle against the corrupt Fairview Estates HOA. With the help of a seasoned legal team, they were now poised to take the fight directly to the heart of the organization, exposing its underhanded tactics and abuses of power. As they approached the homeowner's house, Dominic couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The air seemed to hum with a palpable sense of danger, and he could feel the weight of the HOA's scrutiny bearing down on them. Reaching the front door, Dominic gave a firm knock, his gaze fixed on the peephole. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing the homeowner's guarded expression. "Come in," quickly she murmured, ushering them inside and closing the door behind them. "I've been monitoring the surveillance feeds, and it seems the HOA is already mobilizing." Dominic nodded, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the room. "We expected as much. They're not going to take this lying down." Kaiser let out a low growl, his hackles raised, sensing the growing tension in the air. Dominic reached down to give the dog a reassuring pat, his mind racing with contingency plans and strategies. Suddenly, a shrill, familiar voice cut through the silence, echoing from the front yard. "Vanessa Wilkins, Fairview Estates HOA," the voice called out, dripping with a venomous self-importance. "I have a court order to seize your dog, effective immediately. You have 1 minute to surrender the animal, or will be forced to take more drastic measures." Dominic exchanged a tense glance with the homeowner, his grip tightening on Kaiser's leash. "Time to put our plan into action," he murmured, his voice low and determined. Stepping out onto the porch, Dominic was confronted by a small army of HOA officials, all wearing matching polo shirts and bearing an air of self-righteous authority. "Mrs. Wilkins, I'm afraid I can't allow you to remove this dog," Dominic said, his voice calm and measured. "You see, this animal is a K-9 officer, and I'm here on official police business." Wilkins' face contorted with a mixture of shock and fury, her eyes narrowing to slits. "What nonsense is this?" she spat, her manicured nails clenching into tight fists. "This is our community, and we will not tolerate any interference from the authorities." Dominic raised a hand, his expression unwavering. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Mrs. Wilkins. This dog is a certified police K-9, and any attempt to remove him or interfere with my investigation will be considered obstructing a police officer." The HOA officials shifted uncomfortably, their bravado visibly wavering in the face of Dominic's resolute stance. Wilkins, however, refused to back down, her eyes burning with a fierce determination. "This isn't over, Sergeant Rains," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "You may have pulled one over on us today, but mark my words, we will not rest until that dog is removed from our community, one way or another." With that, Wilkins spun on her heel, the HOA officials reluctantly following in her wake. Dominic watched them go, a grim sense of satisfaction settling over him. The first round had gone to him, but he knew that the battle was far from over. Turning to the homeowner, he offered a reassuring nod. "We're in this together, ma'am, and I can assure you the Fairview Estates HOA is about to meet its match." The tension in the air was palpable as Sergeant Dominic Rains and the homeowner, with her K-9 companion Max, stood their ground against the retreating army of Fairview Estates HOA officials. Vanessa Wilkins' parting words still hung in the air, a thinly veiled threat that promised a continued and relentless assault on their position. Dominic turned to the homeowner, his expression a mix of determination and caution. "That was just the first skirmish, ma'am. Wilkins and the HOA aren't going to back down easy. We need to be prepared for their next move." The homeowner nodded, her eyes hardening with a newfound resolve. "I'm ready for whatever they throw at us, Sergeant. This is my home, and I refuse to let them bully me out of it." Dominic couldn't help but admire her tenacity. It was clear that she was no mere pawn in this high-stakes game, but a strategic player in her own right. With the legal team he had enlisted on their side, he was confident that they could outmaneuver the corrupt HOA and emerge victorious. As they retreated back into the house, Kaiser let out a low, rumbling growl, his ears perked forward. Dominic knew that the dog was sensing something, his canine instincts honed to detect the slightest hint of danger. "What is it, boy?" Dominic murmured, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. He scanned the dimly lit interior, his senses on high alert. Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the corner of his eye caught his attention. Dominic whirled around, just in time to see a shadow dart across the living room. Before he could react, a deafening explosion rocked the house, sending debris flying and smoke billowing through the air. Dominic felt himself being thrown back, his head slamming against the wall with a sickening thud. As his vision began to blur, he caught a glimpse of the homeowner, her face contorted with terror, shielding Max from the blast. Coughing and disoriented, Dominic struggled to regain his bearings, his hand gripping his service weapon as he scanned the devastated room. The HOA's retaliation had been swift and brutal, and he knew that they were now in a race against time to uncover the extent of their corruption and stop them before they could strike again. Amidst the chaos and the ringing in his ears, Dominic caught the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Help was on the way, but he knew that it might not be enough to turn the tide in their favor. This was a battle of wits and wills, and the Fairview Estates HOA had just upped the stakes. As he helped the shaken homeowner to her feet, Dominic's eyes narrowed with a steely determination. "We're not done yet, ma'am. This is just the beginning." The sound of the approaching sirens filled the air, but the true battle had only just begun. The high-stakes power struggle between Sergeant Dominic Rains and the corrupt Fairview Estates HOA was about to reach a fever pitch, with the fate of the community hanging in the balance.